Hey guys, welcome back, and welcome to the greatest battle the Flood will ever fight. Allow me to set the scene. The year is 2552. Reach, humanity's final stronghold before Earth, has just fallen to the Covenant. Despite Chief's success at Alpha Halo, the Covenant have found Earth, and humanity are pressed against the wall. Supply lines to resource-heavy planets are cut off, so at this point, humanity are practically bleeding without a bandage. Then, as if things couldn't get any worse, the Flood appear at Earth with overwhelming numbers. They begin infecting the Covenant ships in Earth's orbit, before eventually crash landing on the surface and rapidly spreading across the planet. With the Flood infecting millions by the hour, the remaining leaders of humanity have no other choice but to take drastic measures to ensure the survival of the human race. This drastic measure comes in the form of a highly classified energy source, discovered and tested by Oni on Mars, Argent Energy. Using this energy, they open a portal to an unknown destination and send scouts through to investigate. What they experienced on the other side of the portal was living hell, literally. Their puny 26th century ballistic weapons stood no chance against the demons of hell, and thus, they were subsequently torn to shreds. As the few survivors retreated through the portal, some demons followed before the portal was closed and begun to wreak havoc on humanity. Despite managing to stop the few demons who came to Earth, the end had come for humanity. Their only possible escape plan was null and void, and within a matter of days, the last survivors of the human race were consumed by the Flood. To satisfy their insatiable hunger for biomass, the Flood used their newfound intelligence to reopen the portal, allowing them to spread through it and consume whatever lies beyond. And so, just how would the Flood fare against the demons of hell from Doom? To answer this age-old question, I've once again joined up with my boy Roanoke Gaming to help me lay it to rest. And so, without any further ado, let's get this great battle underway. Right, so let's very briefly explain the Flood. The core building block of any Flood form is the Flood supercell, which is transferred via airborne spores, infection forms, and any other form of cell transfer. If this cell gets in your system, it sparks the rapid repurposing of your limbs and organs, as well as necrosis, thus turning you into a combat form, or occasionally, depending on the Flood's needs, a carrier form. However, for a host to be infected, they require a nervous system. When infected, not only is the biomass of a host put to use, but so are their memories and knowledge, which is how the Flood are able to use human weaponry, command ships, and interface with technology in general. The Flood use biomass to then create central intelligences that help control the outbreak, making it far more intelligent and deadly. The most basic of these is the Proto-Gravemind, which eventually evolves into a Gravemind with enough biomass. Once a Gravemind is created, Flood pure forms can also be created. These forms require no host, and thus allow the Flood to increase almost exponentially in number. Now, there's one very rarely discussed characteristic of the Flood that's going to be crucial for the battle at hand, and that is the fact that they are extremophiles. Now, at no point in Halo's lore is it ever confirmed that the Flood are extremophiles, but after doing quite a bit of research and talking with Roanoke, we concluded that they must be. For those unaware, an extremophile is basically an organism or cell that can survive at more extreme temperatures, normally up to around 122 degrees centigrade. Now, considering that Flood biomass is able to withstand both direct exposure to the light from stars, and also the heat from entering a planet's atmosphere, I think it's safe to say that maybe, at least in part, the Flood are extremophiles. That said, the Flood are still extremely weak to any temperatures that exceed this limit. Extreme cold and extreme heat are their two biggest counters, aside from, of course, the Halo rings, due to their rotten, decaying makeup. Okay, so now let me pass the mic over to Roanoke to give you all a quick rundown on the Parasite's Challenger.
The demons of hell are imposing creatures who possess strength well beyond that of any creature known in the Milky Way galaxy, apart from the Doomslayer, that is. Just anecdotally, they could absolutely decimate the Legolo. Just throwing that out there. Anyways, standing at a range from low-ranking demons of a little over about 5 feet tall to the titans that tower over skyscrapers, the fact is that these creatures are incredibly powerful and have quite a few natural adaptations. Well, natural in the sense that it exists on them, because Argent Energy is anything but natural, but we will get to that a little later on. Anyways, these natural adaptations will give them the edge over any would-be attackers. A demon's height and strength give them the ability to rip apart any other animal it comes into contact with, and sometimes even their own if they get in the way. This strength is well pronounced across all forms of demons, as they are able to rip through powerful suits, as in like full body suits, like Mjolnir for instance, but obviously the larger the demon, the more power it has. In other universes, the mightiest of armies have fallen to the demonic invasions, and in the Doom universe, humanity is no different. Quickly, demons spread through the portals, overwhelming all of humanity's defenses. When it comes to the low-ranking demon like your average imp, a group of soldiers might be able to take them down given that they are accurate enough with their shots and have a steady hand, but as you continue up the demonic tier, bullets mean nothing. A Hell Knight, for instance, with its speed and power, would not take enough damage before reaching a group of people and basically pulverizing them into meaty piles. Continue up that ladder, and the Baron of Hell could simply charge through any bullets and explosions, annihilating even armored individuals quite easily. And I'm saying armored like tanks. But how is this possible? Surely they are made out of meat, right? Well, they are, but the issue lies in their skin. It has been stated that their skin is actually as strong as steel. While this skin wouldn't completely negate the bullet's impact against them, it would slow it down considerably, and in some cases stop it entirely. Any bullets that did make it past the skin might not go deep enough to cause any considerable damage. Thus, the demon continues to fight. The strength, coupled with the natural resilience, makes demons virtually impossible to fight in open, large-scale conflicts, as they continue to destroy military defense after military defense. Eventually, this leads to a conquering of an area, and then it's just a matter of time before the subsequent universe is then taken down.
Okay, so in this disturbing scenario, humanity possessed the ability to use Argent energy to create a portal to Hell, and now the Flood have consumed them all, so what happens next? Well, it's actually fairly simple. We can assume that Oni used AIs to aid in their research with the energy and the portal, and thus these AIs would subsequently be given the logic plague by the Gravemind, convincing them to join the side of the Flood. When the scientists that were working on the project were infected, all their knowledge will have also been assimilated into the hive mind, so the Flood now possess all the necessary tools to open the portal and begin their invasion of Hell. But how exactly would this parasitic invasion of the worst place imaginable begin?
Upon their first encounter with the Flood, the demons would more than likely die of laughter, as weak infection forms and also puny combat forms come flooding through the portal. The demons would begin to absolutely wreak havoc. Despite their newfound foe showing no fear, demons would simply begin grabbing Flood forms and incapacitating them by tearing them into immobile shreds. While the Flood is still technically living, it's hard to attack an actual demon on a cellular level. But you might be wondering about the Flood supercells in general. There exists a major issue with that, but we will discuss that momentarily. As for their physical form, it simply doesn't matter what they throw at the demons. They would not be able to break them and rout them quite like they do with any other species. Tank forms will be met with Hell Knights and Barons and picked up and just brought back down to their singular arm components and pieces of leg. It doesn't matter. Human combat forms will be ripped apart by the savageries of imps. On top of all this, every demon has the ability to use concussive force and superheated shockwaves, as well as literal fireballs. As we all know, fire appears to be a permanent way to put down the Flood. It destroys the DNA of the cell, rendering it useless. The Flood would not retreat and continue to attempt to overwhelm the demons as the bodies stacked higher and higher, with little give on either side. Because of this, the Flood might also be confused as to how to advance on a creature as powerful as the demons. Eventually, however, they would adapt, as the Flood are not stupid. While occupying portals, grave mines, and even key mines would begin to form on our side of the portal, and for that, I'm going to throw you back to my boy Hidden.
Thanks, lad. With the Flood having their ass absolutely handed to them initially, they'd try and adapt. The creation of pure forms would be increased exponentially. Tank forms and Juggernauts in particular would likely become the soldiers of choice for the Gravemind. The tank's heightened resilience and the Juggernaut's immense strength would create a much stronger Flood invasion force, and the unique leadership abilities of the Juggernaut would make even the simple combat form a much more threatening foe. The invading combat forms would also be armed specifically with weapons that fire armor-piercing rounds, given that the demons have skin as strong as steel. This means that most would be armed with assault rifles, DMRs, magnums, and sniper rifles. Plasma weaponry would also be incredibly useful too, although it's not like the demons aren't used to immense heat. The Flood could also utilize vehicles as well. In particular, scorpions, wraiths, and any form of airship would prove useful, especially if under the command of an intelligent AI such as, in this case, Cortana, given that Chief never got the chance to go back to High Charity and rescue her. And while we're on the topic of Chief, the entirety of humanity was infected. Chief too. This means that the Flood would have the most lethal Spartan in human history on their side, complete with his Mjolnir armor and all of the advantages that come with it. This new and highly specialized Flood force would definitely be able to put up a fight against the lower forms of demon. With combat forms still making up the bulk of the army, their new specific weapon loadouts would allow them to tear through the likes of imps and possessed soldiers with ease, and any that got too close would be destroyed by the pure forms. However, despite the overwhelming number of troops and also now vehicles on the side of the Flood, they wouldn't stand a chance against the higher ranking demons. Their strength, resilience, combat efficiency, and more than anything, immense heat and body temperature would prove to be the ultimate challenge to our friendly neighborhood parasite. In the past, infection forms have proven to be able to penetrate what is essentially titanium. One was able to break through Master Chief's titanium composite undersuit in the library, so technically they'd be able to break the steel-like skin of the demons and infect them. However, despite this being technically possible, the demon's immense internal heat would just destroy the infection form as soon as it came in contact with it. And that isn't the only bad news for the Flood. As Roanoke is about to explain, the demons have far more advantages over them than just that.
Despite this technology, it would literally come down to a war of attrition. Demons have quite literally overwhelmed technologically advanced species, completely changing Earth into a demon homeworld quite quickly after overwhelming the native humans in their own universe, at least in the events of Doom Eternal, as well as Doom 2. God rest your soul, Daisy. Anyways, but here is a major problem. The Flood are also not being replenished. In typical combat scenarios, as an army falls, the Flood simply come in, infect the bodies, and replenish their numbers. But this does not happen against the demonic foe. This is a wrench thrown into the whole Flood strategy. First, when a demon is killed in combat, the body is no longer able to become biomass for the Flood. Upon their expiration, a demon simply burns up. This is due to the internal body temperature being so high that their body turns to ashes. This is brought on by the Argent energy exposure, and the higher the demonic tier, the more Argent energy. So, if the dead are out, what about the living? This is also another issue concerning infection. The Flood would have an extremely difficult time infecting living demons as well. Again, it all goes back to internal body temperatures. So let me set it up this way. Due to the Flood's ability to exist out in space in the direct light of a star or entering a planet's atmosphere without completely dying, it seems to me that Flood cells are extremophiles. Here on Earth, we have extremophile bacteria that lives deep underwater near the ocean vents. The temperature can get up to about 60 degrees Celsius or 140 degrees Fahrenheit. These cells are able to survive this due to an aggressive system in place that repairs their DNA on a near constant basis. Judging by this, I could see the Flood surviving in hell for a while, but it is extremely hot in the plane of hell. But like I said, considering that the Flood was surviving in direct sunlight in space without the aid of an atmosphere, those temperatures could exceed 122 degrees Celsius quite simply. However, the internal body temperatures seem to be exceptionally high in demons, potentially even higher than what extremophiles can exist in. This rolls out a multitude of infection techniques. Flood spores are out simply because of the temperature of hell would cause them to combust when they are in the air. On the other side of the portal, if a demon were to breathe in a spore, their lungs would simply cook it. But I will say this, I believe it's also dependent upon the demon. While all demons seem to have Argent energy at their disposal and the use of fireballs in some form or another, it appears as though Argent energy exposure is a real determining factor when it comes to body temperatures. As you move up the demon tier, they all sport more and more energy, which means in theory the Flood could potentially infect lower forms of demons with their lower body temperatures, seeing as the Flood could be extremophiles. I believe it would work within a range for the Flood being able to infect the occasional imp or even pinky demon by direct contact with an infection form, seeing as the demons do indeed have a nervous system. However, by the time they get up to Hell Knights, the temps would be much too high for them to infect properly, which this could actually yield a Private Jenkins scenario where the Flood form just isn't able to take complete control. The temps would be much too high to infect properly, properly and would probably cause the infection form to explode on contact. The Flood would also have an extremely difficult time piercing the skin of a demon. However, it would still be possible, if not improbable. Last, the Flood would still have to contend with the Argent energy in general. Argent energy corrupts anything living slowly at first, but as it takes hold, it is absolute. The Flood, upon fighting an extremely powerful foe that they couldn't infect too effectively, would also be contending with an unforeseen force influencing them on a cellular basis.
So, at the end of the day, who wins? Are the Flood able to add hell itself to their long list of universes that they could consume? Or will their so far flawless universe invasion record be destroyed? Well, I think the answer is quite obvious. The Flood would stand absolutely no chance whatsoever against the demons of hell. Any vehicles commandeered by the Flood could very easily be evaded and destroyed by the demons. Any larger pure forms would be decimated by the higher ranking demons, but worst of all demons beyond the Imp and the Pinky would be essentially impossible to infect. Their immense internal temperatures really are the Achilles heel for the Flood. Despite it being technically possible, it almost entirely prevents infection forms from doing their thing, and as Roanoke explained, the same goes for spores too. If a spore were to be inhaled, it'd most likely just be destroyed inside the demon's body, rendering it useless. And on top of this, the extreme heat of hell itself would hinder the Flood's overall advancement. Even the pure forms would be weakened by it, and any attempt to construct a proto-gravemind in hell would be futile. Not that it couldn't be done, but the Flood would be under so much constant pressure from the environment, and also from the creatures that lurk within it, that it'd be extremely difficult. Eventually, once the demons had pushed back the Flood invasion force, they'd follow them through the portal and begin their invasion of Earth. Now, granted, the environment on Earth is far more forgiving for the Flood, but even then, it doesn't change how well the demons counter the Flood on almost every level. They're still almost uninfectable, so really, the outcome on Earth would be the same as it was in Hell. It'd just take a little bit longer to happen. And so, we can now confirm that the demons of Hell would absolutely reign supreme over the Flood. For the first time ever in this series, the Flood have suffered a defeat, and quite a crushing one at that. Can I please get an F in the comments for our Floody boys? Defeated, but not forgotten. Alrighty, that should just about cover one of the greatest universe battles of all time. Considering this is the first battle where the Flood actually lose, I really hope that we were able to do it justice, because defeating the Flood is quite a monumental achievement that deserves only the best treatment. With that in mind, I want to give a big shout out to my partner in crime, Roanoke Gaming, for helping me with this mammoth of a battle.
Thanks for having me on, my dude. Honestly, it's strange because despite every species' godlike tier of technology, what it really comes down to is fire, strength, and claws, and maybe titanium steel skin, whichever. Regardless, I'm just glad to finally see something, I don't care what it was, but at least something take down the Flood after my beautiful children known as Necromorphs lost last time.
So definitely make sure you go and check out Roanoke's channel for all things Doom, Metro, Dead Space, and more. So thank you massively to all of my amazing patrons for the continued support, and thank you all so much for watching. I really do appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next one.